Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sketching Almost Daily. I had a bit of a weekend off because the surf was really good and it's been super crazy hot, so I spend most of my time outside. But we're back in the heat wave. We're gonna draw a little scene in 20 minutes. I got my timer set to 20 minutes. Here we go. So what I want to draw today is I already got my canvas set up. I got my little grid set up of the golden ratio. I always pass this little area when I go surfing, and it's like typical Dutch landscape with, a bit of farmland, and there's usually some cows roaming around, and it's a really peaceful, quiet little scene, and it's really cool. So I was thinking maybe we can do that. This needs to be a little bit more vivid on the blue side. There we go. And just dropping in a little bit of a sky color. It doesn't need to be super accurate, super detailed, just a bit of a gradient here. Might go a little bit lighter towards the foreground here. Or towards the horizon line, sorry. And yeah, there's always this little patch of farmland with some cows roaming around, but there's also these bushes, and there's usually a couple of trees, and then a church in the background, and it's super typical Dutch looking. And we're gonna try to recreate it in about 20 minutes, so we got our timer set. Should be all good. Gonna make a new layer here, and I'm just gonna grab a something that is kind of green, but maybe a little bit more on the blue side of things. Just here, I'm gonna use this as my horizon line, like right there. That's gonna be my horizon line. I want the horizon to be very, 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 very low. I'm just gonna drop in a layer, and then another layer with a little bit more green in it, and then another layer with a little bit more green in it. Come on. And going further away from blue as I drop in these layers. And a little bit closer to, whoa, you gotta be straight, brother. A little bit closer to these greenish darker tones here in the foreground, something like that. And there could be maybe a little bit like that in the foreground. Doesn't have to be all straight, but just a little bit straight. Just gonna remove my grid for a little bit, just real quickly. Yeah, that looks about right. It's a bit of a sketch of like the layering and stuff. Just gonna grab a very fluffy brush, grab our little background color. Just gonna lighten it up just a smidge, maybe make it even a little bit less on the blue side. Gonna set the opacity to 20%. I'm just gonna put in a little bit of a haze here in the background, so that these this horizon line gets blurred a little bit. Might even go a little bit lighter than this, maybe even almost white, but not quite. Yeah, that's what we want. Something like that. Cool. Because usually when I drive there and it's super early in the morning and it's going to be a hot day, there's like this hazy fog rising up from the fields and stuff. So that's kind of like an indication over there. Back to our grid. I'm just gonna grab this old brush, grab a little bit of brown, and with the opacity maybe set to 80%. No, that's too bright, Pete. Settle down. We want maybe I'll leave it at 20%, something like that. I'm just gonna copy that color after a little bit. Let's zoom in. Just gonna copy a bit of this color, I suppose, and set that to 80%. And there's usually like a church tower here in the background, but usually it's like very, very far away. So it's all faded into a bit of a bluer tone. It's a little bit too big. It needs to be smaller, actually. Yeah, something like that, maybe. And we can definitely make it a little bit more sharp. Boom, boom. Maybe the tower's not even that big. Maybe it's more like that. Yeah, that's more like it. You can come back up now. No, you can be smaller. Something like that. Bit of a fiddle without actual reference. Oh no, laptop tripping out. We're good. A little bit of a fiddle because I don't actually have a photo for a reference, so I'm just kind of like doing this on the fly. There's usually like a little, what do you call that? Like an atrium? No, atrium's at the top, isn't it? What's the thing called that's like attached to the church, but it's more like the main hall? But there's a word for it. I just don't know what to call it. So that's kind of like sticking out like so. Let me remove my grid for a little bit. That's sticking out like so. And then usually there's like a little thing up the top here where there's like a little symbol or something like that. And then usually there's like little windows coming through, like something like that. Maybe there's a bunch over here too. Whoa. Something like that. Cool. Now this church is usually, I think maybe it can be a little bit, that's totally a message. But we're just going to pretend that never happened. Maybe this church needs to be a little bit more on the brownish side. So I'm just going to grab a different, do we want that? Do we want that? Yeah, that's fine. And then I'm just gonna grab all the pixels that are part of our little church. I'm just gonna grab a little bit of the sky color. I'm just gonna light up maybe a smidge here over on the very edge of this church. Actually, let's make it super bright. We want this thing to catch the full reflection of the sun here on this very edge, like boom, something like that. And then all the way on this very edge too. Maybe even a little bit in that window. Ooh, that's a little bit too bright maybe. We'll save the brightest for like the actual walls here. Oh, that's not very accurate. Boom, there we go. Something like that. That'll do. And then I'm not too phased about the bottom because usually when I see this little church, there's like trees and stuff in the blocking the view. So this is usually just like here hanging out in the back. Oh man, I forgot about the clock. There's usually a clock, so we got to make our window a little bit smaller. Window can be like maybe up until there, something like that. And then it totally has a little clock that's round going above it like that. Something like that. Yeah, looks a little bit funky, but we'll take it for now. And then we're just gonna grab a new layer, put it in front, and then grab some of this super light green and back to our little hazy brush. Opacity set 20%. We want this to be pushed back into the background. Something like so. We just want to see the very tip of this church as if it's kind of like coming up from the fog. And then I'm just going to grab whatever color's underneath here. That little green. Boom. And I'm just gonna grab a tree looking brush, like a foliage kind of brush, and we're gonna pop in a couple trees here. Actually, let's start with the trunks. Maybe trunks can be a little bit darker, and boom, just gonna grab a little bit of this brownish color, 80% opacity. Just gonna put in couple of indications here that there's like something growing. Doesn't need to be super detailed once again, just here and there, just giving an indication of where these bushes and trees are going to grow. Kind of helps depicting the size and the kind of like general idea. So I want the trees to be a little bit higher on the sides and then a little bit lower here in the middle, something like that. Ooh, maybe that's a little bit too big. Cool. And then we're gonna grab a brush that resembles foliage. And we're going to start off with maybe even a little bit of the same color, but just slightly more bluish green. And I'm just going to pop in a little bit of this fluff here. At the very top of this tree. Doesn't need to be super detailed. And we're going to do this to pretty much all of them. Just little taps. They can be different shapes and sizes. And maybe we should mix up our color a little bit too into slightly more of a bluish tone, a little bit darker maybe, just to give it a little bit more dimension. Maybe this one's real big. Maybe this one comes up all the way that way. Back to our green color. And maybe these kind of mend together like that. See what that looks like. Yeah, looks alright. Doesn't need to be super detailed. We just want indications that there's something happening here. Gonna go into a little bit of a lighter tone, maybe even a smidge more yellow in there too. We can go even way more overboard with this. Maybe even something like a goldish color. See what that does. Nah, not sure. That's too much. Too much, Pete. Settle down. And we'll go back into our normal green. Just leave it like that. And just some indications here and there. Maybe we'll go a smidge lighter towards the back. Right up. Cool. Back into another layer of soft, fluffy brush into a little bit of a background color, and I'm just gonna create a little bit of haze here at the bottom of these trees. And maybe we can pull in this brush up. We'll do the trick. Just kind of want to give the indication that, you know, this little bit is not really about the trees, and it's not really about the church. It's like, usually when I get past this, there's all these cool clouds hanging above this little picture too. I'm just gonna grab a very textury looking brush. We're just gonna give this little farmland a little bit of texture too. I'm gonna set the opacity to about 80%, and maybe there's like all these little crops and things growing, and they all need to have a little bit of texture to them. And they can be a little bit more yellow, maybe towards the foreground with a little bit more highlight. Just gonna check the time real quick. How much do we have? We got 8 minutes left. That's fine. And I'm just gonna drop in a little bit of this texture here, because I also feel like we made the foreground maybe a smidge too colorful. And maybe it can be a little bit more on the oh, actually I kind of like this bluish tone, but maybe it should have a little bit more brown in there too, because there's all kinds of dirt and stuff hanging out in these fields. And sets it apart a little bit more. I like that. I like that a lot. Boom. Back to our little hazy brush, because I feel like the branch of the trees are still a little bit too visible. Usually when I drive past here in like early morning, all I can see is like the top of the trees just as foliage popping out, and everything else is covered in this beautiful misty haze. But up close you can still see like the texture of the green grass and stuff. So I'm just trying to recreate that. Ooh, that's a little bit too green, I think. Could be a little bit more on this brownish side of things. Yeah, that kind of works. Just here and there. Maybe this can be a little bit more brown too. Something like that. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, it kind of looks like there's a little pond that formed here in the middle. I quite like that. Yeah. Why not? Just gonna grab a slightly different brush for the very, very foreground here. Gonna turn it slightly dark. Just here and there. I'm just gonna drop in a little bit of long grass, just to give it a little bit of. Actually, this kind of looks more like barbed wire. Maybe we should not go and use this brush. Try to erase as much as we can. Yeah, that's fine. And just gonna grab a different sharp looking brush. Opacity set to 80. Yeah, that's a little bit more friendly looking, isn't it? Just gonna pop in a little bit of that high grass here over in the front, and maybe we can mix it up with a little bit of should probably be a little bit more bright. Maybe it can be like this greenish bluish tone. Nah, let's go full yellow, gold, green color. That's better. That's way better. I actually kind of like just having the dark color here in the bottom corner. That's fine. Righto, so we got all these things happening, which is cool. And now we should probably go all the way back to the background, and I'm just going to grab a big old blocky brush right there. I'm just going to grab our darkest hue that we have at the very top. Just going to turn down the saturation slightly, make it slightly darker, just with the opacity set to 80%. I'm going to block in a giant cloud that's forming behind this church here. Something like that. It's gonna be massive. Going all, like, rising all the way to the top. Boom, something like that. It is huge. Just gonna try to shape it into something cool. Oh yeah, there we go. Cool. And then I'm gonna grab our, oh no, did I delete something? We're gonna grab our fluffy brush. I'm just gonna grab our white highlighting color. I'm just gonna, nah, that's not it. That's not it. It's too much beat. Settle down. Different brush, maybe like that. I'm just gonna give a bit of a soft edge to the left side here, and I'm gonna use some of that same darker color to make, I want the middle of the cloud to be darkest, and towards the like the horizon line it actually gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And now we're gonna grab a what brush are we gonna get? I want it to be kind of like with a soft edge. What brush are we gonna get? Maybe we'll try this one. We'll see what happens. Just gonna grab some almost pure white, not quite, but close to it, and just on the very edge of where I put our little darkness bits in. I'm just gonna layer in all these twirls and things that are happening, and so the light is coming from the top left corner, and just anywhere where that light's gonna strike, I'm just gonna twirl in a couple of these fluffy little things. Doesn't need to be super detailed. Time is ticking on the clock after all. But just an indication that this super bright light is coming from the very top left corner, and it's making its way down the face of this cloud. And I kind of want to have this highlight lead the way into what's going to be the tip of the church. So something like that. So as if it's kind of like catching the eye and directing it down diagonally into what is our church. Something like that. Cool. That's pretty good. That's kind of what it looks like in real life too. Just going to set the opacity about 20, and next to all of these super bright highlights, I'm just going to smudge up a tiny bit of this cloud, just so that it flows a little bit more like a gradient from its lightest tone into the more dark tone. Something like that. And then we go to our beloved smudge tool, set the opacity or the strength to about 20%. I'm just gonna grab and pull into this circular motion to smudge it up a little bit. And I didn't really quite plan on the very edge of this, like, super light edges to be that textured, so I'm just trying to kind of remove that by smudging it a little bit. And we definitely want to smudge out these bottoms too, I think, where it's getting a little bit darker. Yeah, something like that. A little bit more here in the middle. Because clouds are fluffy, we want them to be fluffy. Gonna set the strength to about 50% and really work this bottom right corner to smudge it out. Something like that. Cool, that's not bad. Going back into a very bright sharp with maybe slightly soft edge. Now I'm going to go into a full white, and just on the very last touch, I'm just going to go back into these little corners here, and I'm just kind of like letting my my pen kind of bounce up and down, just to give all of these little sparkly things just a tiny bit of color here. Tiny bit of sparkle at the top, and that's what's really going to set it apart. Something like that. That's kind of cool. I dig it. All of these super bright edges. Hey, I just heard my alarm go off. That's okay, we're almost done. Just gonna turn that off real quick. So there's one last thing that I want to do before we wrap this one up. Obviously, I got to finish highlighting these clouds really quickly. We'll smash that out real quick. Boom, 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 boom. There's one last thing that I want to do. And that is I just want to give a little bit of glow to these clouds. So I'm just going to grab a very fluffy brush. Add a tiny bit of yellow to the color mix. And just with the opacity set to 20. Just going to give these clouds a little bit of a glow. As if the sunlight is fully striking it. And maybe we can change the layer opacity to something like, what are we going to change it to? Linear light? Hard mix? Yeah, I kind of like the hard mix one. Set it to about 80%. Maybe we can add in just a smidge more over on the center of the cloud. And at the very bottom. As if this is really coming alive here at the bottom. Boom. Righto. That's going to be our sketch for today. Hope you all had a good time. I definitely had a good time. I'm going to try my best to survive this heat wave. And we'll be back with another episode probably tomorrow, where I'm going to paint another super tiny mini acrylic landscape. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and then we'll catch you on the next episode. See you later, everybody. Have an awesome day.